It's time to speak truth in the midst of chaos, to discern fact from fiction in a world of agendas. To take control of your thoughts, define the truth, and live a life set free. It is time for counseling beyond the couch.
All right. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome. You ready to get started?
Let's get started.
Let's do this. All right. Welcome to AWAKEN360-Counseling Beyond the Couch with myself, Heather Freeman. I'm a licensed professional counselor for, 15 years roughly, and I'm the founder of AWAKEN360, a nonprofit located in Springfield, Missouri. I'm here with my co-host, Jenny Sotai. She's a licensed professional nurse with over 20 years of experience, including psychiatric placements. Please remember, this show is not a substitute. Let's rephrase that. Good Lord. Not a substitute for counseling, but a great addition to it. We love to give you that information. But if you are looking for a great counseling service, there are several in Springfield, and I encourage you to get plugged in. Today's show is brought to you by AWAKEN360, a nonprofit counseling center located in Springfield, Missouri. We have a mission to restore hope and empower the community through education, preventative youth groups, counseling, and community. Join the mission and register for our programs at www.awaken360.org. Well, good morning, Miss Jenny.
Good morning, Heather.
Oh, I'm excited for our show today. We're going to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of how to discern trash talk versus truth. I don't know if anybody's a big baseball buff, but my dad is a huge baseball buff. So is my brother. They were both pitchers, and both my sisters played. And one of the favorite things that they used to talk about was trash talk in sports.
Right.
So we're going to get into a little bit of trash versus truth and how to tell the difference. We've got a question in from a listener about how to help her 5-year-old son with anger problems, causing him to get kicked out of preschools when her own anger is a big struggle. And then we're going to be wrapping up with a fun, surprising aha moment in our Moments That Matter. So let's dive, Jenny, right into the reframe, a Berean breakdown. We're going to jump into a practical, bite-sized look at cognitive behavioral therapy, talk about some tools to translate simple psychological concepts into everyday strategies for managing thoughts, shifting perspectives, and building healthier habits. The breakdown invites you to question what you think you know. Each day we take a closer look at common beliefs, phrases, and assumptions, digging into the why behind them and testing them against thoughtful reflection and deeper understanding. It's an open invitation to think critically and stay curious and refine your perspective. So let's hit it. I'm excited about this part because this is CBT. This is my playhouse.
I know I've said this a lot. I just love learning from you. Even after however many years that we've
worked together.
I still learn something from you all the time. So tell us about these cognitive distortions.
Ooh, okay, so I brought in my cheat sheet that I like to give out in counseling. So before we dive into kind of giving you some examples, I kind of want to explain just a real quick overall. So, this morning I was listening to a verse by verse that I listen to on a regular basis, and it was in 2 Corinthians talking about holding your thoughts captive.
I'm in 1 Corinthians. How neat.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, I love. And sometimes it's kind of tough to really understand a lot of Paul's stuff, but I love how he loves to use boxing and military analogies. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite groups was whenever we opened up a TRICARE unit. We were working with military families. I really enjoyed working with that population. I'm a very solution focused kind of person, and they're very much a cut to straight to the heart of the matter, don't dance around it, and that vibes very well with me because I want to get people solutions quickly. And so I think we've done a great job of establishing that inside your own mind you are your own worst enemy, but then you also have people in our own environment that are trying to manipulate information and trying to assert bias and get you to do something that's going to profit them at your own detriment at times. And so the same tactics that are necessary to be able to fight that manipulation is also necessary to fight your own manipulation in your own head. And so 2 birds with 1 stone, essentially, if you can learn how to do that. And that's what we're going to dive into, start getting into the nitty-gritty. I know we've talked a lot about Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud. Well, Sigmund Freud would have called a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today defense mechanisms. In CBT, we refer to them as cognitive distortions. So if you think about it, I always picture Elton John with rose-colored glasses. right?
Okay.
You know, if you put on a different tinted sunglass lens, you see the world differently. So think of CBT and some of these cognitive distortions as distorted thinking that's going to impact the way that you view the world, and therefore it's going to impact the way that you respond to it. If that filter is coming from a place of fear, you know you're operating in a cognitive distortion. If that filter is coming from a place of assumption, justification, fear, and doubt, which is a lot of your insecurities. If it's coming from anywhere in that family, you can pretty well bet that you're operating in a cognitive distortion.
I love that. I recently just had a conversation with my mother about this, and I won't divulge the details of that conversation. It was a private conversation.
Sure.
But we were worrying together.
Yes.
And, it's better to worry with someone because then you can just get all kinds of negative energy going on, right?
Right.
So
one builds on the other.
Right. And
Yeah.
we began to build on each other. And I said, we need to stop. I believe fear is driving this bus.
Mm-hmm.
And when fear is driving the bus, we're going nowhere good.
Yeah.
So we had to step back and say, okay, yeah, this is fear
Mm-hmm.
driving this. And we can still trust God
Mm-hmm.
with our children, with our grandchildren, and all those things.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, and so I think that, what you just described was that ability to, number one, acknowledge where the foundations for that conversation were coming from, and then
Right.
two, the wherewithal to be able to stop that conversation and say, hold up, right? Let's check where this is coming from, and then let's redirect it. And that is a habit. It takes between 6 and 8 weeks to formulate a habit. It takes even longer to change one. So
I think it's taken me between 6 and 8 years.
to change it or to develop it?
To develop it, maybe. I did not have this skill in my 20s. Let me say this.
It's so hard. I think we're all a work in progress, right?
Right.
And so you got to cut yourself some slack, and we all do. We are our own worst enemy, and comparison is one of those big things. It's like, oh well, they're at this level. They're so good at being able to control their impulses, being able to stay emotionally regulated. Why can't I do that? And then, guess what? That's just another tick to be able to sit there and fester in your mind to beat yourself up. And the first thing you got to do is go, number one, we're all human. That's a truth. And therefore, in that basis, we all have our own struggles. So that person that looks so well put together, that always has, you go to a counselor and they're supposed to be the person that has it all. Well, guess what? Those that can't do, teach.
Right. I think you do a very good job doing, for the record.
Oh, I do my best. But we're talking about anger. I came from a family that struggled with anger. My dad had a heck of a temper. I have a heck of a temper. It's so funny when I tell some of my clients that, they're like, what?
Right.
And and I'll tell this story. My sister locked me out of the house one time when I was a kid. I can't remember. I was younger than 3rd grade. It was probably 1st or 2nd grade.
The perfect age to be antagonized.
Right. And she's 8 years older than me, and I was, of course, probably being a pain in the rear end like usual. And so she thought that it would be best to be like, okay, well, fine, if you won't do what I'm going to tell you to do, you're not coming inside the house, and locked me outside. Well, I lost it and broke through the glass door. Busted through. I absolutely lost it. Completely emotionally dysregulated. And she still teases me to this day, by the way, because she got in trouble for it.
Of course. Of course.
So, that I think comparison is a struggle that we have. But if you can really get into the habit of stopping yourself and saying, okay, number one, check yourself. How are you feeling? Because healthy thoughts bring solutions. Healthy thoughts give a clear direction. Healthy thoughts help you resolve and solve problems.
I was just so amazed, and I think I am every time I practice this. I'm one who has been told that I have control issues. I like to control things, so maybe that's what has taken me so long to catch on to this. But when we stopped and took that moment to say, hey, fear is driving this bus,
Yeah.
the emotions changed.
Mm-hmm.
The anxiety almost dissipated, and it was just such an amazing moment. And I can't get over how God works things in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Moving towards today, I've had a busy week. I didn't know what we would be talking about today. So I just love all those little things. Yeah.
Well, and on to that, you talked about how the emotions changed of the conversation, right, Jenny? When emotions follow thought, and it's kind of the debate between the chicken or the egg, which one came first, right? So biologically, you can't have one without the other. There's so many times in counseling where someone will be like, well, I have no idea what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking, I just reacted. And I'm like,
right.
Okay, that's not possible. It's not possible. You're not, it's not like
it feels that way though, right?
It does. Most of the time, because our habit is so fast. Most people's habit is to go from something happening in the environment, right, that triggers a response. Now, the environment did not control the response. It just triggered it. So, we could all walk into the same house, smell the same scents, right? And then all three of us, the people in this room, having a different reaction to that stimulus, right? Eric, you could be like, oh my gosh, I can't be in this room. That smells so bad, right? I would probably be with you if it's sauerkraut. But my husband would walk into that and be like, ooh, what's cooking? That sounds good. I'd be like, get me out of here. You go inside and enjoy. I'll be outside on the porch. I hate sauerkraut, right? Same trigger, different responses. And so with CBT, that very first rule that most people don't like, by the way, this truth takes us a little bit to get through, because most people like to say, this made me mad. This made me scared. This made me uncomfortable. You made me feel judged. You made me feel fill in the blank, right? Well,
so turn that around, Heather. How do we change that? How do we stop what we're doing and change that thinking?
Well, first you have to acknowledge the truth. If a trigger had the potential and had the capability of making a response, then just like in science, every single time I administered that trigger, I would get the exact same response. Scientific theory, you have a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, and you see what the reaction is. And if it proves your hypothesis correct, right, then you've got theory. So if the theory that a trigger can make me respond, if I do this, it's going to make me angry, right? Then every single time that I administer that same trigger to everybody, I'm going to get the exact same response. And the problem is you don't. Case in point, sauerkraut makes me cringe, makes my husband go, ooh, yum, 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 right? Same trigger, two polar opposite responses, okay? I love sunlight. I used to have this office when we worked at the hospital, right? And the sun would come over the other side of the building. The window kind of looked out into this little alcove. Well, I had an early morning appointment. We always had to do it at the exact same time because the family was, across several different time zones, and so we had to coordinate. And we had a very limited window of being able to meet to maintain daylight hours for that time zone difference. And so this kiddo, I always had to pull first thing in the morning. And so we're sitting there in session, and I just noticed that she's like super irritated. And I'm like, okay, like I get it. It's the same time every single day. It's not like we're talking about the greatest things, but like, what's going on? Why are you getting so irritated? And she's like, your window sucks. And I'm like, what? I love my window. Like, I absolutely love it. The sun comes up in the morning. I open the door and it's like, oh, I get so excited and happy. And she's like, I hate it. Why? Why do you hate it? And she's like, well, it glares at me first thing in the morning and I just woke up. And I'm like, okay. So trigger, all that sunlight, right, for her was like blinding and absolutely terrible. But because of my perspective, my back was to it. So it lit up the room beautifully. It made me feel good, made me feel happy. For her, it was like cringeworthy.
Right. I have a similar story, and this comes from working at one of the hospitals here in town. I had a patient, and he had he was full-blown AIDS. Which, if you know anything about medicine these days, that's
manageable now.
It's very manageable now, yeah. And
but
what we were dealing with was a 21-year-old young man.
Yeah.
It's hard to get young men compliant on stuff. They want to be out living life, and so I had come in to him one morning at 9 o'clock. Now I gave him his medicine at 9 o'clock. By this time I've been up like 6 hours.
Yeah.
I've had 4 coffees. I'm excited for the day, and I enter the room, and I'm a good nurse. I have a good rapport with people, it's very uncommon for people to dislike me. And he says to me, I enter the room and I say, good morning, I'm Jenny, I'm going to be your nurse today. And he said, I hate you.
What a wonderful wake-up call.
I was like, what? I was like, oh, well, I need to call the doctor. You're sicker than we thought. Like, people don't dislike me. And I'm like, well, help me understand this. And he said, you come in so happy and so cheerful, and you're loud. And I thought, you know what, you're right. You're sick. And by this time, I'm midway through my day. You're just waking up.
Sure.
And I'll do a better job of paying you that courtesy.
Yeah.
I'm still going to call the doctor and see what he thinks about this situation where you hate me. You know, maybe we could reevaluate that later in the day and move to a dislike. But yeah, it was just his perspective. I'm in the middle of my day. He's at the very beginning of his. And not everybody's a morning person.
Yeah. So different perspectives, but I think number one, you have to be willing to acknowledge that truth, that as much as you want to say what that person did made me angry, what, you know, you being all energetic in the morning made me start off my day badly. Like, that's a hard thing because it requires you to take responsibility for your own emotions.
Right.
And it requires you to take responsibility for your own experience of life. And as much as we would sit there in a very regulated state, be able to say, well, yeah, obviously, like I control whether or not I choose to be respectful, right? You know, and I just had this conversation on this very topic of like, well, that person was mean, that person was rude, they were disrespectful to me, and so they made me mad and I lashed out at them. They shouldn't have been rude, they shouldn't have been mean, and they shouldn't have been disrespectful to me. And you're right, they shouldn't have done those things, but that was their choice.
Right.
And you have the choice of how you're going to react. If we're talking about this in a marriage or a couples counseling or a family dynamic, you know, it's one of those things where, well, my mom repeatedly does this and it's wrong. Okay, you may be right about that. Mom's not perfect. Dad's not perfect. Husband or wife is not perfect. You're absolutely right. They shouldn't have spoken to you like that. But you cannot blame the trigger for how you responded to it.
Oh, man.
And as much as that seems like right now maybe like a simple concept, you know how many sessions it takes for most people to get to that realization, because it requires you to go, I can't live on both sides of the fence. Either you have the power to control yourself and you have self-control, or you don't. It's either the environment controls you and you are a victim to your circumstance, or you control how you're going to respond. You can't have it both ways.
And your response will dictate maybe the rest of your day.
Sometimes.
I think in that instance with that young man, had I taken serious offense to what he had said and got in my own head, then both of our days would have been a terrible, terrible day.
It could have been, yeah, because you could have reacted to that and been like, well, you're just mean, you're just rude.
You're mean, you're rude.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
the
just
best
a jerk.
nurse,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly.
So.
You could have responded a lot, and he could have responded a lot of different ways.
Right, exactly.
You know, so rule number one of CBT that most people don't like is that you cannot blame the trigger for how you respond to it. You have to own your response. And what that does, you know, for those of you that don't like to be at the mercy of your environment, for those of you that don't like to be controlled, I really want to call you out, because I can identify with that. I don't like people trying to control me. If you tell me that this is a rule, the first thing I'm going to say is why. And if I agree with it, I'm more likely to follow it. If I disagree, I'm going to probably question, why is this a rule? Right. You know, I lived in a neighborhood with an HOA, and they had several rules that I really didn't like. I ended up moving away from that HOA because somebody complained about me washing my car in my own driveway. But yeah, oh my God, the soap suds.
The soap suds.
How dare you put soap suds in the road? Like, it's
we're trying
a
to measure the
travesty.
Grass here, Heather.
Oh my goodness. So many stories with that one. But if you are like me and you don't like to be controlled, then CBT is going to be a really great treatment paradigm for you, because it's all about acknowledging that you control your response, but with that comes responsibility.
Absolutely, because I think for me at least, once I acknowledge that, then I have to take responsibility for the fact that I chose that behavior.
Yeah.
I have something that just Subway has finally come around to my way of thinking.
Oh my goodness. I'm excited to hear what
So,
this
I don't know why I go there. I lose Jesus in Subway.
means.
Because do you know how they put the triangles on the sandwich? The triangles of cheese.
Okay.
So they used to cut the cheese into triangles. They take a full slice of cheese, they cut it into triangles,
Okay.
and they place it on your sandwich. And the moment where I lose Jesus is when they put the triangles the same way. Like, it's very difficult to explain on a radio station what they do, but it just, and
It's a trigger for Jenny.
it's a huge trigger for me. So, and I'm able to maintain my composure enough to say, hey, can you switch my cheese to the correct placement?
It is not supposed to be angled that way.
But my reaction to their reaction, not okay.
I need to go to Subway with you, Jenny.
Well, I just told you they've come around to my way of thinking. They no longer are cutting the cheese into triangles.
How do they cut it now?
They just put it in whole slices. They don't even have to figure out how to put it back together now. They just put it in whole slices, and we have a much more pleasant interaction. But in all reality, my reaction to this is way over the top. It's way over the top. My kids won't go to Subway with me.
This is amazing.
But if I'm using CBT, I have to own that I am not doing the right thing in my response.
In the reaction.
In my response.
Sure.
So I once asked a Subway lady to please put my sandwich to the side. She got her attitude all over my cheese. It took me 10 minutes to find my kids in the Walmart after that.
That's amazing.
So I pray before I go into Subway now. I don't want to have, this
Don't let me
persona.
lose it over the cheese.
Right. I don't want to represent Jesus in Subway. I'm not good at it.
That's amazing.
But I'm working on it. And so is Subway. They're doing their part too on this relationship.
That's good to know.
They stopped cutting the cheese.
All right. So as we're wrapping up on the reframe, a Berean breakdown, I wanted to share with you some common cognitive distortions. They're called many different things. So in counseling, you may hear them referred to as different topics. But the first one is polarized thinking. Another way that we refer to that one is all or nothing or black and white thinking. The example that they give is a student who gets an A- on an exam feels like a failure because they're used to getting A+ grades only. They have the mentality, if I'm not successful at everything I do, then I'm a failure. So if it's not perfect, then it's wrong. There's no gray area. There's no, another common one that I was just talking to somebody about was with relapse. And relapse can be with anything. It can be, if your goal is to not bite your nails, if your goal is to not smoke, if your goal is to fill in the blank, whatever it might be. Maybe it's stop yelling. You know what I mean? If your goal is to not yell or stay emotionally regulated when they cut the cheese wrong at Subway, right? So if your goal is to maintain a certain behavior, and you mess up and you fall back into that behavior, even if it's just a little bit, right? All or nothing thinking would say, okay, well, I'm trying to stop smoking and I smoked again, or I'm struggling with alcoholism and I'm trying not to drink, and man, I fell off the wagon Friday night. Is that an immediate failure to the 6 months that you've maintained sobriety before? If I have all or nothing thinking, yes. Right. And what that's going to do, the outcome of that is I just worked for 6 months. Everything is for naught. What's the point? I'm going to fail anyway, so I might as well just dive into this. And then what you're going to see is somebody that legitimately falls off the wagon, whatever the goal might be. The healthy alternative to all or nothing thinking is what we look at for relapse prevention, for progress in counseling, or whatever the behavioral goal might be, is you're looking at 3 different things. You're looking at frequency, right? So 6 months, man, you stayed clean. 6 months.
That's a big deal.
That's huge. That is huge, especially like maybe you've been struggling with alcoholism for 10 years or 5 years, or even if it's just a year, like you just went 6 months. You almost undid that halfway through, right? That's a big deal, and you need to celebrate that. The best thing that relapse can do is it can teach you how to prevent the next one. Because the truth is, go back to those foundational truths. We are all human and we all mess up. So if my goal is to stop yelling, or if my goal is to maintain my temper, right? Then if I say, oh my gosh, Heather, you lost it, you got stressed out, and you raised your voice at your kids or you yelled at your kids, oh my gosh, it's all for naught, right? I'm gonna be beating myself up. My internal dialogue is gonna finish the job for me. Remember, I am my own worst enemy. So,
I struggle with this in eating healthy.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me. So
yeah, sure.
I messed up at lunch. I had a piece of pizza.
Yeah.
Well, I might as well go ahead for the ice cream and the rest of
Hot
the
fudge
pizza.
sundae.
And,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go to McDonald's too today because I've already messed up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is something I work on. And if I mess up, I try to just stop there and not continue with the rest of the pizza.
Yeah, so one of the best ways to challenge all or nothing thinking is if I haven't, number one, it's labeling. If I haven't 100%, right? If I get a 90%, then I'm a failure. If I gave in and I relapsed a little bit and I fell off the bandwagon, right? That doesn't mean that everything is for naught, because you're going to go back and you're going to look at those 3 things that we use to measure progress. You're going to look at frequency. Right?
Okay.
How often are you messing up? Is it still as frequent as it was before? Are you messing up every single day? Are you messing up every single hour? Are you messing up every single week? What is the frequency? And then the second, when you mess up, how long does it last? What's the duration? Because you're going to look at frequency and duration. So when you did fall off that wagon that Friday night and you went on a binger, right? How long did that binge last? Because you could be looking at progress there. Maybe before your binges were a week, maybe they were 2 days, right? Did this one last 2 hours? That's a big deal. You're still looking at progress from where you started, right? And then 3, intensity. How intense was the relapse, right? So whenever you fell back into that behavior, was it as full-blown as it was before? Or was it like a little toe dip into the water? Because you're going to be looking at all 3 of those, and that's going to help you. Number one, give yourself some credit where it's due. Not allow that fear, that insecurity, all of those struggling thoughts to come in and plant themselves into your mind, and it's going to challenge that. And so that is one cognitive distortion that a lot of people struggle with in their daily lives, and that's how you fight it. So remember, trash talk in your head versus truth. Trash talk is always going to be based in fear, doubt, insecurity, assumption, and justification. Truth is going to be rated in evidence. It's going to be rooted in evidence. You can prove it with facts, and that's how you're going to know the difference.
That's my favorite thing. It's not my favorite thing you say to me, Heather.
One of them.
I will say it is one of the most effective things you say to me. What are the facts?
Yeah, show me the evidence. We do live in Missouri. All right, so off the couch conversations, y'all. A relatable conversational segment inspired by real therapy questions. Good Lord, I can't read today. Listener submissions. It explores life's everyday dilemmas through reflective prompts, offering perspective, validation, and practical insights. No therapy couch required. You're welcome. To be part of the conversation, please email your questions to Heather and Jenny at contact@awaken360.org. You can also jump on our Facebook page. It is CBC, Counseling Beyond the Couch, at 92.3 FM on Facebook. So hit us up there as well. The question that we had sent in. So my boyfriend and I have a little boy. He knows me as mom, and I view him as my own son, but I do all the parenting. My boyfriend says he's a bad dad and that I should go ahead and just do it because he's better at it than I am. I'm assuming that means fathering or parenting. I'm overwhelmed and I yell. I lose my temper. My son is starting to have anger issues. He's 5 and he's been kicked out of multiple daycare centers for hitting teachers when he gets told no or something gets taken away from him, and I don't know how to get his anger under control. Ooh, there's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
Jenny, what do you see in that one first?
Well, when I see it in its whole, I see a little bit of resentment brewing. I see an overwhelmed person and someone who's struggling to maintain their own anger and manage their own emotions. But mainly, I think as a fellow parent and Now, a grandparent, I think what I see in here is just someone who's overwhelmed and wants to do what's right for the child.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, blended families are not always the Brady Bunch.
Right.
They're difficult.
Hopefully not.
They're very difficult, they're worth it. They can be some of the most enjoyable moments of your life, but she's recognizing, I see in the beginning, that this is not biologically her child, and whether or not we want to admit it to ourselves or not, there is something different there.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but I feel like she's acknowledging it here in the beginning, and maybe, there's some resentment brewing. And to be honest, I see a daddy who needs to step it up.
Yeah, that's where I see maybe some potential. One of the things that we would say would be footholds for resentful thoughts to take place. That could have even been, maybe this 5-year-old boy is both of your biological children. It's really hard in parenting when you're trying to balance the workload as a parent. Yeah. Especially nowadays where we carry so many things on our shoulders. The dynamics are different. Nowadays, sometimes, you got both parents oftentimes that are working to maintain bills and the financial responsibilities in the home. And then both parents are also trying to be parents. And then also trying to be husband and wife, or partners. They're trying to manage so many different roles at the same time, and each one of those roles comes with expectations and responsibilities. And so sometimes when you feel like that's discrepant or lopsided in the relationship, that can be a really fertile ground for resentment to take place in your mind. And so I think she's acknowledging that there might be a little bit of that at play. I would agree with you, Dad, going back to that all or nothing thinking, just because you struggle with it doesn't mean you're all bad at it.
Right.
We all have parts of our personality, and gosh, as a parent, there are areas of me that I really struggle with that my husband compensates beautifully for. That that is the beauty of a community approach and a family approach. That's why it's a family. Even if it's not, let's say that you're a single mom or a single dad out there and you're trying to parent, when you have people in your life that help with that and can help support you, they can help compensate for those other areas that maybe you struggle with.
I agree with that. There was a time when my children were little and my husband was out of town working a lot, and my best friend, she worked the opposite shift, and so a lot of times she was with my children during the day.
Yeah.
And she has a different personality. She does different things with my children, and I told her, I said, I'm so thankful for you in their lives.
Yeah.
Because they get this piece that I don't really have.
Yeah.
And I was very thankful for that, and it looks like maybe that they need to find that place here.
Yeah, I would agree, Jenny. I think Dad needs to recognize that he brings something to the table too, and not let that fear, again, the things that lead to faulty beliefs and cognitive distortions, not let the fear of messing up hold him back, because fear, man, is your biggest enemy. And right now what it's causing is potential resentment in this mom, in that relationship as a wife, that he's not stepping up because fear's holding him back from really stepping in for his kid. And it's also going to change the experience for his son. Sons need their dads. Boys need their dad.
And men, in my opinion, in this era, need to do a better job of being men. And that's just my opinion. So take it or leave it. But it's time to step up. Young men cannot learn how to be men from fearful men. Yeah. And we live in a community that is rich in resources.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a good parent these days in Springfield, Missouri, it is
lots
totally
of
possible.
Yeah. So let's get into, I know we've only got about a few minutes left on this, so let's get into the question about how to help him with his anger. Well, first, anger is a big subject, so I'm going to give you the real flyby version. Anger's oftentimes viewed as a bad emotion. It's not a bad emotion. It is one of your many emotions, and without it, you're missing out on a huge resource, because anger is a huge motivator. It's also your body's alarm system. So if your anger, we classify anger differently than any other emotion. We call it a secondary emotion. The reason it is a secondary is because it always comes second to the first emotion, which would be the primary. So real quick example, if I'm sitting in a conference meeting with my colleagues and I make a suggestion, or if I give my 2 cents about something and somebody scoffs at it like it's a joke or like it's unimportant or embarrassing, well, my first emotion might be, ooh, that's embarrassing. I thought that was a good idea and everybody else clearly thinks it's a bad one. Maybe I looked like an idiot in front of everybody and my trusted colleagues. So some embarrassment, and then maybe some frustration. What if that was my friend who just kind of threw me under the bus in front of everybody and made me look like a fool? Am I a fool? You know, I'm going to have a lot of questioning. I'm going to have a lot of doubt. I'm going to have some embarrassment, maybe some resentment toward that friend or that colleague, some frustration. And there comes the frustration. There comes the anger. There comes the defense emotion. And that's exactly what anger is. Anger is a shield. So mom, you know, first recognize your anger for what it is. It's your alarm system that something's off here.
Yeah.
Something needs to be addressed and something needs to be changed. And the longer that it goes without being addressed, the longer it's going to fester and infect everything else. And the longer that you allow it to affect everything else, it'll start branching off into other areas of your life. It's going to spread into other areas of your marriage. Now it's starting to spread into parenting and your impacts. And then that's only going to breed more doubt, more fear, more of you being your own worst enemy. So for your little boy, man, at 5 years old, they're little sponges. That age range between 2 and 5, they're really starting to develop their sense of self, their sense of defining relationship styles, relationship dynamics. And so, you know, think of it like outside in and inside out change. If the family structure and the family dynamic is healthy, oftentimes that's going to sift its way up to the surface in other areas. And our kiddos oftentimes are a reflection of our household. Right. And as much as that's a really, really hard reality for parents, trust me, I'm a mom, I'm not perfect. Right. You know, there's times where I've watched my kids do stuff and I go, ooh, that's me.
Where did they get that?
I have no idea. It's their father.
Of course.
You know, so on this one, if you can start learning and harnessing and recognizing that anger is not a bad thing, it's an asset to you. It's your body's alarm system. It's your emotional fire alarm going off, letting you know that something's up. You've got to address that. You've got to challenge it. And your son will start following your example because he learns how to handle anger and how to process it by what he sees.
Right. And as much as I railed on the dad, I'd like to also say that she is very responsible for her own actions. Mm-hmm. And she has to take that into account regardless of how he's being a dad or not being a dad.
Yeah, so dad, step up. Don't let fear hold you back. Partner with mom on this. Your son's going to appreciate it. She's going to appreciate it. And in the long run, you will appreciate it. And when the two of you can really partner together on that, processing, talking about what's going on and what your anger is reacting to, your son's going to see that change. He's going to feel that change more than anything. And then he'll be able to actually start talking about what's making him angry instead of letting his behavior talk for him. All right, guys, so I hope that we gave a little bit of help with that question. Our last one comes into moments that matter. Moments that matter is, you know, we want to be able to wrap up our show at the end of every week with some stories, some examples, some that are written in, some that are from our own experiences. But to wrap us up at the end, we like to share moments that matter by focusing on those hopeful moments. They highlight real success stories from counseling, from life, and it helps remind us that meaningful change, breakthroughs, and growth is possible, sometimes in even the darkest of circumstances, in the darkest of situations, that good can come from that. So, you know, I didn't prepare one in advance for today. I've got a couple floating around in my mind. Did you have any that you wanted to share, Jenny?
The one we talked about, I think yesterday we talked about a young man in a group.
Yeah.
So we would facilitate groups, and one of our techs came in and they did a really neat group. Please don't call in or write into Heather and tell her I have the dynamics of the group all wrong, because I'm doing
from memory only.
I'm doing this was 20 years ago, maybe 15. So they did a group and they told the kids that they had to be put on, they're going to be placed on a ship, and on this ship they're going to be, sent off to some desert island, and they could take 9 things, and those 9 things were 3 ideas, 3 people, and 3 objects, I believe. And so as the group went on, I'm listening from the nurses station, and I'm finding myself interested because, boy, they came up with some things, A lot of lighters made it onto that boat. I don't know why. I remember that from the group. So it gets towards the end of the group, and they've been asked to throw things over one at a time throughout this group out of these 9 things they brought. And she got to one young man, and the 3 things that he had left were love as his idea, the Bible as his physical object, and his mom as his person. And Miss Mindy said, now I want you to throw off 2 of those. You can only keep 1.
Ouch.
Those are important things.
Yeah,
Your
so they had to go
mom-
from 9?
9.
Okay, so they had to go from 9 things down to 3, so they had to ditch 6 of them.
Right.
And then from that, they had to go all the way down to 1.
Right.
Ouch.
Right. And so his 3 things are his mom, his Bible, and love. I mean, are there any more important things in this world than those 3 things? He's got to toss 2. And so I stopped what I was doing, because by this time I'm totally into it. I'm like, what is he going to do? And this young man of 16 years old, and he was so insightful. He made such a huge impact on me as a person.
He was a leader on the unit at the time, too.
He was such a great leader, and he was so insightful and so willing to do the work. And
it's hard, that's a rarity. It's going back to that truth that we talked about earlier in the reframe. It's hard to acknowledge that you have to work for mental health, and it's harder even then to put the work into it. It's not easy.
And his desire and his follow through was so amazing. And I tell you, he remained an amazing point of strength for me in my career. After several years had passed, he reached out to me and he said, hey, and I'll never forget the time he reached out to me first to say, hey, I just want to say thank you. And this is what I'm doing. And I'd had the worst day in healthcare. I had decided I was done, that all the difference I was making wasn't worth it anymore. And he calls and says, hey, I just want to let you know you made a difference. And that kept me going another 10 years. So so he has these 3 things, and he says, well, and he was very, very just matter of fact. It didn't take him no time.
Wow.
He said, I'm going to throw over my Bible, and I grasped my chest. And he said, I'm going to throw love over. And I thought, oh.
Interesting.
And
Kept
he
his mom.
said, and Miss Mindy asked him, why, tell us why you kept your mom. And he said, because with my mom, I will never lose the Word of God, and I will never lose love. And I just melted right there. I think it was his 2nd day on the unit, and I knew this kid was going to go far and do well in life, and I'm proud to say he really has. And he was an inspiration to me then. He's an inspiration to me now, and he's a grown man adult now.
That's weird to say.
I know, and he has children of his own.
Oh my gosh, no way.
Yeah. So, but just to see that made me kind of really stop and think myself, am I this insightful?
Yeah.
But I just love that, and it has stuck with me all these years. And if you're listening, you know who you are, and we're still praying for you.
Always. It's you said something. Not only number one, I remember him. Very insightful. I'm not surprised.
Right.
And man, to his mom.
Yeah.
You're, as a parent, it's really hard to know when you're doing well. Like, back to that question, it's really hard to know when you're doing well, but moments like that help you know, like, okay, I'm sowing the right seeds.
Right. And she was a very, she was a good mom. She was doing her very best.
Yeah.
And in fact, this young man impacted the way I raised my children. They probably didn't like it. but I asked him, and I'll just add that, I asked him, I said, I'm looking at what in the world did your mom do wrong? This is usually the mom's fault.
Yeah, well, and to give reference, it's not like he was there with us because he was the poster child of wonderful behavior.
No. He had done some things, and I asked him, I said, your mom seems so involved.
Yeah.
She seems so connected to God. It seems like your home is connected to God. And how did this happen? This is not supposed to happen. The math's not math in here,
Yeah.
And he said, that's easy. He said, my mom trusted my friends.
Ouch.
And I was like, oh. So that evening, a little girl comes to my door and knocks on the door and says, can Rylan and Derek play? No. Get out of here.
I don't trust you.
Get off my porch. So their friendships may have suffered from that story, but he was just so willing to just say what the root of the problem was. It was him. It wasn't his mom. She was just too trusting.
Ouch. Well, I think that goes to, our choices are our choices. Mom and dad's, people in life, you can do all the right things, but inevitably people will choose what they choose. Your job is not to control their choice. Your job as a parent is not to put your kid in a cage. Your job is to teach them how to ask the right questions, to teach them how to be good consumers of information. Your job is to teach them healthy. Right. And not to be perfect. You're not perfect, so first acknowledge that you're not perfect. Therefore, they're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being imperfect. You're going to make mistakes. The goal is not to stop making mistakes. The goal is to make smart ones.
I used to tell my daughter, and I still tell my daughter, don't be afraid, be aware.
Yes.
Don't be afraid. I took her downtown one time to practice this in real life.
Sure, yeah.
So I take her downtown. It's about a little bit before 8 o'clock, before things get real wild. Mm-hmm. And I'm giving her this wonderful speech on how not to be afraid of your environment, to be aware. And around the corner, I can't even tell you what walks around the corner, but I ended the lesson in that moment.
And then walked back to the car.
And we walked back to the car. And I felt a little uninspired, but still, I teach her, please don't be afraid, be aware, just be aware.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example. And with that, mom and dad sowed seeds in his life. And I remember him, and despite the mistakes that he'd made, despite the history that I remember reading in his chart, he was able to learn from those mistakes and learn from those examples. And that's what you want. Your kids are going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every single day, sometimes really stupid ones. But if you let those mistakes define you, then again, you're giving into that. It's you defining the mistake and learning from it. And that's what you want to teach your kids to do.
Absolutely.
So that is the end of our program for today. We want to thank our sponsor, AWAKEN360, and thank our listeners for listening and for being a part of Counseling Beyond the Couch today. You can catch highlights and past episodes online at AWAKEN360.org on YouTube and Facebook. Jenny and I will be here with you every Friday afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. Until next time, remember these truths. You guys are here on purpose. It's not an accident that you're here. You have a unique and special purpose because you and your experiences are unique and special. And when you root into that truth, you can overcome fear and achieve your purpose. Until next time.
Bye, Heather. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to AWAKEN360's Counseling Beyond the Couch with Heather Freeman, LPC, and Jenny Sodai, LPN. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel for the newest updates and programs. We are launching our A360Y groups for ages 12 to 18. To learn more and register a student or to volunteer to be a group lead, go to www.awaken360.org. Remember to email contact@awaken360.org or message us on Facebook to ask any questions or share your own stories. Until next week, you have a purpose, you're here on purpose, and truth will set you free to achieve that purpose.